Welcome back to the Castaway Consultants, where we teach future Survivor players how to play the game while criticizing current and former players. On today's episode, we are going over Season 42, Episode 9, Game of Chicken. I am one of your co-hosts, Josh Wessler, joined today by two other fabulous co-hosts, Derek Kupacek and Ryan Stacy. Fellas, how you doing?
Pretty good. I'm ready to, teach some things about racism.
I'm certainly in no position to teach anyone anything about race. I can be a listening ear for the most part, and I can get the ball rolling for some people, but I mean, there's so much that we can't talk about, and we shouldn't,
Yep. So that's why we're going to tread very carefully today.
When this episode was going, just progressing through, and I saw other issues coming up, like masculinity and the implications of that on Survivor.
We can talk about that.
Just completely chuck that out the window.
Oh, no, I think we can, there's some of the masculinity stuff we can talk about, but for those who haven't seen the episode yet, this one of the tribal councils focuses heavily on race issues, which we are in a very poor position to talk about because, do I need to say it?
Essentially, it's just us trying to do our best to be advocates. We do have an audience. It might be a small audience, but every person makes a difference. It's a conversation I'm glad that Survivor can keep going. So for, I guess, your race-related commentary with this episode, honestly, just go watch the episode. You'll hear from some people and their thoughts on the situation, and they say it way better than we can, and they can say it with gravitas. They can say it with some oomph and, some life experience behind it. And it's our job to believe them. It's our job to understand, and it's our job to be advocates. And I think that's the role that we're going to try and take on this podcast. So anything less than that, and, I hope that everyone takes it that way.
If you are looking for a podcast, for our podcast that's really going to delve deep into the racial issues and angle of this episode, especially, I don't think we're the right one for you. So, there will be other ones out there. Hopefully some hosted by people of color. I guess I don't know on that one. I would recommend maybe listening to one of those as well as, in addition to this one for this episode, just for perspectives that we just don't have.
Yeah, I don't listen to the Purple Pants podcast, but I imagine that they would dive into this.
Bryce and Wendell, I think that'd be a great one to listen to this week.
Neither Derek or Ryan really mentioned it, but if no one has really listened to an episode where race has come up before, where this hasn't been mentioned, we are three white guys. So
if you're not watching the video,
yes, for anyone not watching on YouTube, maybe better places to get a more well-rounded perspective than us.
Yes.
Yep. And honestly, because it came up, one thing I want to say is if you go back and you listen to our rewinds, there were probably times where we weren't empathetic to race as much as we should have been at the time. Season 4 immediately comes to mind. And honestly, I wish I could, go back. I'll leave it out there because I don't think we were, awful. But it's just as we go through times and we take our journeys, we educate ourselves more. Like, for example, I'm much more of an advocate for being able to quit and supporting mental health moves and stuff like that. This is just stuff that I've learned on my journey. And, I'm on this race related journey as well, where I'm trying to understand and, Survivor's helping me do that. So thank you, Survivor, for that. But I wish that we didn't have to have these conversations.
I can't speak for, I can speak for the three of us. We're all trying to learn. We're trying to get better. I think we do a good job. There's always room for improvement. But we're going to do our best today.
Absolutely.
But again, we are not, we may be Castaway Consultants, but we're not race consultants.
Yeah. And we're certainly not life consultants, and we don't pretend to, we don't pretend to do that.
So, because this episode gets heavy, it goes beyond the game of Survivor, I think, a little bit. So do with that what you will.
But not too much to where it's not enjoyable either.
Sure.
Which is important to note, because sometimes in the past it does get further than that.
Season 39 being the best example. All right. So on that note,
with that PSA kind of out of the way.
Yep. Normally this is like we'd ask like what we thought about the episode, but really, it was interesting, I guess. There's a lot here.
Yeah, it was unique, and not just because of the game mechanic twists. It was the social issues definitely interwoven.
Yep. There's a lot here to unpack. You guys ready to dive into it?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right, spoiler alert for episode 9 of Survivor 42 Game of Chicken. Go check it out and come back and listen to us. All right, so the episode begins. We get back to camp. Romeo handles being left out of the vote very well. He's pissed internally. He is angry. He hates everybody. He's like, I don't hate any of you, I promise. Cut to conventional. I hate all of them.
I want to kick him in the face.
So he's really chill. Does a really good job with being left out of the vote and being like the backup vote in case of an idle play. Hai, on the other hand, is super pissed because Romeo just like threw a vote on a hinky vote, just to like stir the pot a little bit. A real Teresa Cooper move back in Survivor Africa.
Real T-Bird moment.
And Hai is pissed for some reason. It's not like votes count against you like they did, at least in Survivor Africa. Those votes tallied up against you in for tiebreakers. So Lex had like a decent reason to be pissed. I don't know why Hai is pissed. Romeo does claim, it wasn't me, it was Chanel, which I loved. But Hai is very dramatic about this.
Agreed. And Hai needs to relax. I know Ryan already said it kind of, or he implied it, but it's kind of like a pitcher in baseball. You're pitching a perfect game and all of a sudden if someone gets a base hit. Hi, you're still in a really good spot. There's no need to get frustrated because someone threw a vote on you. It's really hard to play a perfect game. So, don't be upset about it, and certainly don't be publicly upset about it.
Plenty of people have won the game with 8 votes cast against them. So Hai wants Romeo out. Roxroy talks about making a guys alliance because there's 6 men in the game. They don't really count Romeo just because he's not really part of the main group. So there's a group of a core 5 guys. There's 4 women in the game. Rockstar wants to take out the girls just so the girls don't band together and team up and take out the big men, which, he gets crapped on a little bit in this episode, but I don't think that's necessary. There's some sound strategy there because that has happened before. Nothing to suggest it had been happening so far this season, but it is something to be concerned about because we've seen it happen the Blackwater Brigade.
Absolutely. Season 9,
yep.
Up until it didn't work anymore. We don't get it often. I guess this is now 2 times in the last 2 seasons, but we didn't get it a ton. I mean, it's not going to work, but we do get discussion.
And that's why I think we could safely say, don't be the person to throw out. Let's make a men's alliance, but let's make a women's alliance because we saw Drea do it earlier this season, and it immediately backlashed against her. So if somebody comes to you with that idea, definitely consider it. And maybe go along with it if it helps your game, but don't be the person to throw that out.
Yeah, not unless you're someone who really needs something like that to shake up the game, which I don't think that Roxroy was at this point.
No. The thing is, Omar and Hai aren't really interested in being part of this alliance. Because I guess Jonathan, Mike, and Romeo, the alpha big tank men, they're into it. Omar and Hai, they're not your stereotypical alphas. I hate to use those terms, but that's not what they are. And not to say Jonathan and Mike are, but they're smaller guys. They could be considered more nerdy or something like that. They're not as interested. And that's one of the things you run into. You don't, sometimes the alpha guys want the alpha guy alliance. Well, not everyone on the season is your alpha guy. So that's one of the risks you run.
Yeah. And we're at the point of the game where we have, at the beginning of this episode, we have 10 people left.
Yes.
So at a certain point, you build up these meat shields, and at a certain point, you're going to have to start using those meat shields and getting them out of the game. They're nice to protect you, but you might have 1, 2, 3 votes ahead of you that you can use these guys to take out to keep the attention off of you. And I think we're seeing that a little bit with Hai and Omer's strategy here, where they might want to partner with them, but they don't want to make an actual solid final alliance with them, because if they make it to the end with them, it might be harder for them to win versus just picking them off one by one or maybe every other vote.
Sure.
I do think it's slightly short-sighted, especially for someone like Omer, actually for Omer and Hai, because I think that Jonathan and Omer, they're the duo, and I think that Mike and Hai, they're the duo. So if you get down to a final 5, I think that Roxroy is an easy one to go. I don't think that Roxroy is a big threat to win immunity. And I think that any 4 of them have as good of a chance with each other as everyone else. But I can understand why from, Omer and Hai's perspective that, this benefits other people more than it benefits them.
Sure.
But it almost felt like it was by not going with it, it was more to spite other people than it was to benefit themselves, which is an aspect of Survivor.
But I think they should have considered it more than it was presented to us. Immunity challenge. It's going to be one of those interesting ones. We're going to divide into 2 groups of 5. One person from each group will win immunity. Both groups will be going to tribal council separately. And then whoever wins the challenge overall, they get a reward of food, and then they get to go to tribal council second, which could change. You get to see who got voted out of the first tribal council, and maybe that'll change the vote. I think for like the first time ever, this had a significant impact in this episode.
I wouldn't even. I mean, last season we even saw an impact of it when they went to tribal, and they saw that it was not a super aggressive vote or anything.
Sure.
Not saying that there was a plan A and a plan B, but who knows what could happen? You could have something just unravel like we saw here this time around.
Yeah. Can you imagine if because High and Jonathan are going to win, with Jonathan winning overall. I want to go back to this immunity challenge in a second, but just imagine had High won overall, this could have been drastically different. I wouldn't have been shocked if maybe Dre had gone out here and then Rockstar goes right out the door. This could have been crazy.
It was definitely interesting having all the hardware in the second grouping.
This immunity challenge is one of the fastest ones I think we've ever seen, because they have to balance on like floating dog houses out on the water, and it's really rough surf. So like 7 people fall out in 1 minute.
Yeah, just immediately, just like 3, 2, 1, go, and 4 people are out.
And High wins immunity.
I was just daring Jeff to have them move up to the next rung. Like, let's say they make it to that point. They didn't need the other 3 rungs. This was way too entertaining.
I know that they usually have like a time limit of moving like up each step, but like even if there was a time limit set, I feel like this should never have gone to it.
This looked like it lasted 3 minutes tops.
Yeah.
We heard most of the way through that it's like it's only been 2 minutes, and they fast forward a little bit. That means because it was only like I don't know, a minute on our screen. I'm like, wow, really, just that long?
One of the fastest challenges we've had.
They should have done it like the fast wrapping like YouTube videos or TikTok videos where they put a timer up on screen so you can see all of this happening in real time, and just dedicate the screen time to the real time challenge.
Kind of like a YouTube speed run.
Yeah, exactly like that.
So Jonathan beats High overall. So here's what's going to happen. So the orange group is going to go to tribal council first. That group is Mike, Roxroy, Romeo, and Omer, with High having 1 immunity. The blue group is Drea, Jonathan, Lindsay, Marianne, and Tori. Jonathan having 1 immunity. So one group is all men. The other group is all the women plus Jonathan. Really interesting division.
Yeah.
We'll go to the orange group first. It seems like Romeo's the really obvious move. It's 4 against 1. But Omer, like we mentioned last week, he's been kind of hanging out with the bottom feeders because everyone thought he was one. He wasn't. He's probably controlling the game more than almost anybody, but all the people on the bottom seem to like Omer. So Omer wants to keep Romeo in the game and get rid of Rocksroy because he doesn't really get along with Rocksroy. Okay, that's a good move for Omer, I think. The problem comes, Omer gets High, and eventually High gets Mike on board to knock out Rocksroy instead because High doesn't like Rocksroy. I think this is a bad move for those two, especially Mike puts it great. He's like, if we vote a Rocksroy, no one is going to trust us. I gave my word to Rocksroy. Why? And then the other thing is, if you take Rockstar to the end, congrats, you win.
I didn't really understand that motivation of it. I mean, skipping ahead to who's the best person, or did the right person go home? I'm not really sure what this decision was when it comes to people who you can beat at the end. Maybe they just don't see Romeo as a threat. Maybe he was just a threat in the pre-merge or right away after the merge, and since he has essentially no alliance, maybe he's just not seen as much of a threat anymore. But I like this move for Omer, and I do long term like it for High, but I don't see where this made sense for Mike. So they convinced him somehow, but it really goes against what Mike and I guess by association High were going for just up until this point. So that was really confusing to me.
Let's just finish this group up first, and we'll go to tribal council. Then we'll jump back to the other group just to keep it simple for us. It's going to end up being 4 votes for Rocksroy, 1 vote for Romeo. I think this is the wrong move. I think it was good for Omer, obviously good for Romeo, but I think the other, I think it should have been Romeo. I think this was the wrong move.
I think that when you have a twist like this, and I actually said this in our little like pre-merge TikTok, the majority alliance of 8 had control over both of these tribals, assuming that, the right people didn't win immunity or the wrong people didn't win immunity. Maybe just take your alliance into the top 8 so that you haven't burned any bridges collectively, and you can start, quote unquote, playing the game again from there. I do see the logic in taking out a Roxroy right here. I don't want to lose the fact that, if you zoom out, Drea is certainly weakened by Roxroy being out of the game just on her own, because now she doesn't have that tight duo who will vote with her no matter what she does. She's kind of a loner now. So it does have that effect. But maybe what they don't know is that Drea's pack in some serious advantages.
Oh, yeah.
And she can really mess up the game. So, zoom out. There's some logic to the overall effect of the game, but I think here and now it was best to take out Romeo.
Okay.
I think what I struggle with is exactly what Marianne was saying. If we're jumping forward, just what she was saying about being a little bit forward thinking here. We're not forever going to be in this group of 5, so don't throw away your entire game just to make a move here in this group of 5. I have an issue with where Hai and Mike are going to go after this. You're going to be down to 8 people. Who are your final group of 4, if you even want to narrow it down to that they're going to go to the end of the game with? I just don't see it after they vote out Roxroy and basically say anyone's up for grabs. Is it Romeo and Drea? Because we have a Taku 4 after all of this, so I'm just confused about where they're going to go from here.
So what's your final answer? Was it the right move or wrong move?
Oh, I think it was the wrong move. Okay. Sorry, I had kind of said that earlier, but I'm just kind of explaining that I don't really see. I don't think that they're looking further than this vote. I think that they're looking for between Romeo and Roxroy, who do they want to go, which also didn't really make sense. But I think that Mike got pulled along by Hai here.
Sure. 100%. But I just don't know why Hai did. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
I will say it was interesting because we did get a confessional validating from Mike saying that Hai was his number 1 person. So we got actual confirmation from him that that's the case.
Who else would it be?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe he got super close with like Roxroy or something along
or Jonathan
the way, or Jonathan. He's been really close with Jonathan the last couple of episodes.
I was gonna say because they're the only 2 left from Vati. Like I just don't know who else it would be. Let's go to the Orange tribe or Orange team, I guess. Now, Jonathan wants to take out Drea blindsider because she has an idol. He tells Marianne and Lindsay this. They seem to be on board. But he tells Marianne that like, hey, we're gonna tell Drea you're the backup. Marianne's like, no. Never tell someone they're the backup. Never, ever, 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 ever. If someone asks you that, be like, oh, I don't know. Who do you think the backup should be? Don't answer that question.
I think the only time something like that should come up is, let's say you want to be a Colby in season 2 and you are saying like, no, you know what? I'll draw the heat.
Sure.
I volunteer as tribute. And then you can add that to your resume. Like, hey, I was the one who was taking the bullets when the tribe needed to get something done. That is a strategy to earn goodwill with a jury.
And the only reason that was a really good move for Colby is because that was back when we had the old tiebreaker rules.
Correct. And then it went away with relevance for a while.
Yeah.
But with immunity idols and stuff, it definitely gets trickier and more risky. Yep. But yeah, point being, like, Jonathan, don't tell Marianne that she's the backup. Nobody wants to be the backup. You saw what Romeo did last episode when he was the backup.
There's so many instances of people being told they're the backup and they just cause chaos. Horrible move.
Heather did it last season.
Yep. Sierra Easton did it in Cambodia. Anyway, Lindsay and Jonathan talk, and Lindsay says, okay, if Drea plays her idol, Marianne is gone. No! If you're going to go through with this, Drea plays her idol, and Marianne plays her idol, and then you do a revote and Tori goes home. Lindsay's dead dog wrong with that logic. Now, granted, we shouldn't be here in the first place. The plan should be, all right, we vote for Drea. If she plays her idol, she knocks Tori out of the game. Great. So yeah, I don't like how we got here, but Lindsay's logic is dead dog wrong.
Even though it's wrong, I think it still gets the point across, or at least it should get the point across. You can't really tell Jonathan whether or not it does, but her main point is you don't want Marianne to go home. She's part of your actual alliance. So in that case, why are we even telling Marianne that she's the backup plan? Going back to what you guys already said, but don't tell someone they're the backup plan. It should be Tori, just in case idle shenanigans go down, whether it's Dre playing idle, whether it's Dre and Marianne playing an idle. You just want to let him know, like, this is what would actually happen. Just don't even consider Marianne.
Lindsay is right, but her argument is so wrong. There's better arguments here, but ultimately it turns into an argument. Jonathan doesn't listen at all. It's not a good episode for Jonathan, even though he won immunity.
I think it's because he won immunity.
Yeah.
He finally gets to impose his will on some merged aspect, because he's been at the mercy of everybody else. And being the big guy, we've been telling him, like, that's a good thing. You know, you have to trust your alliance to get you to the next day when you're someone like Jonathan. And now he's like, no. I've waited my turn very patiently. Well, yeah, but you can't treat people like this when you do this. What's interesting, I don't understand why we didn't just, go to Drea and be like, hey, are you fine if we just vote Tori and make Tori the backup? It's almost like they got into their own heads where Jonathan's like, oh, look, this is our opportunity to make a big move, and we want to make sure that Drea is, she thinks that Marianne is the big move that we're going to try and make, and not her. So it's almost like he overcomplicated it, at least in my opinion.
Jonathan caught a case of big move-itis for sure here.
Yes.
And there was a much simpler way to get this done. Don't know if it would have worked because of what's going to happen at tribal council, but they took an overly complicated way to get nowhere.
And how do you think Drea feels watching this episode back right now? Like, oh, I was going to get all the votes. Like, it's crazy.
And I think that she knew that just by she gave a little bit of a clue later on in tribal. She's like, it was after she had committed already to playing her idol, but she basically said, I knew I was going to get some heat tonight, so I was thinking about playing this anyways. She said something in that realm. So we don't actually know what would have actually happened,
sure,
but it feels to me like she probably would have played her idol tonight either way.
Well, Jonathan said to Drea, let's take out Marianne tonight because she has an idol. Well, Drea also has an idol. And Drea is like, that's a little bit of a red flag. Yeah, it is. So they get to tribal council, and their doors are blown off that Roxroy was voted out. And Drea is very shaken by this because she puts it, there's going into the merge, there was 4 black people left in the game. Chanel and Roxroy, both black, both out. There's a looks to be a pattern. 2's not a pattern, but 3's a pattern. Drea was going home tonight. So she's like really concerned, and she's like eventually gonna say, I'm going to play my idol tonight. I don't like this. Something's wrong. Something's off. I'm not going. I'm playing my idol just to be safe. And she was going home tonight. So yeah, it's kind of wild how she got there. I feel like she took information that wasn't, she took breadcrumbs that weren't leading her to the right place, but still got to the right place. That makes sense.
Yeah, and halfway through the episode, when we kind of realized, or when we knew who had immunity, I had mentioned to Ryan, I think the move for Drea, use your kip on Marianne's idol.
Knowledge is power.
Use your knowledge is power advantage. Steal Marianne's idol. Use Marianne's idol at that tribal and vote out Marianne if that's what you want to do. That's what she should have done going in. That should have been the plan from moment one for Drea. So the second she commits to playing her idol, I'm like, yeah, that's a good move. We have been strong advocates on this podcast. If you get to the merge and you think that someone knows you have an idol and you just want to get through that vote, burn your idol. It's no good as a souvenir. So this is one of those weird moments in Survivor. She's got 4 advantages. Use your idol.
Yeah.
You use your idol and get through it regardless. I would have been disappointed if no idols were played tonight, just because people are playing too complacent and too comfortable. So like Ryan said, the way she got there, I don't think was necessarily ideal, but I do think ultimately it was the right move.
Oh, 100%, because she was going home.
I think this also tells us that it almost confirms that in the last tribal that it probably was the wrong move to send Roxroy home, given how surprised everyone was. Because now you're going to have to deal that going back to camp, and you're going to have to explain to yourself, why did you make that move? Why did you blindside him? Do you still have trust with people?
majority should play it safe in situations like this where, you get split into two groups. Play it safe if you can.
And one thing that's interesting, at least all of the guys on that alliance can say Roxroy was trying to make a men's alliance, and we weren't comfortable with that.
That's that for High and like Romeo and Ulmer, that would be the ideal move, is be like, he wanted to make an all guys alliance.
Oh, I mean, and even Mike and Jonathan can say that. Everyone can say like Roxroy was trying to make an all men's alliance, and he was trying to do it right before we got divvied up.
Yep.
That's why we had to make a move.
So Jonathan starts whispering to everybody they're going to change the vote to Tori and tell Tori to keep the split the same. But Marianne just like kind of puts a stop to everything. It's like, by the way, I'm not voting for Dre. I will not write her name. After seeing this, there's two black people on the jury. I'm not going to be part of continuing this cycle. So Jonathan puts his foot in his mouth for sure, trying to talk about how this has nothing to do with race and that they're implying he's racist. I think Marianne puts this more succinctly than any of us ever could. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, please go back and watch it and just listen to what Marianne has to say, because she does a fantastic job here, just kind of breaking this down.
And she's 100% right.
Yeah.
I think she was referring to social media in general, people online. Twitter itself is a cesspool. So I think she is 100% right that anyone will find a reason to point this in a certain direction. So her and Drea playing their idols, giving people no excuse to put anything in that direction seemed like the best move.
Because Marianne says she's gonna play her idol, because if she doesn't, someone on Twitter will claim she was using race as a weapon to further her spot in this game. Doesn't want that to happen. So she's gonna play her idol. Whether or not this is a good move is almost irrelevant. Because Marianne has a great reason for doing it. She might not have needed to play it. I don't think it matters either way. But the really positive thing here is everyone knows she has an idol. She gets that target off her back just like Drea does. So I do like the move overall for both of them to play their idols beyond just, beyond the heavier stuff, the race stuff that we were talking about. Just from a gameplay perspective, it takes that target off their backs. So that's great.
Yeah, and I've got 2 points. First, I'll follow up and say, we said that if Drea played her idol, Marianne should probably follow up and play hers immediately. She does that. So on a gameplay level, game theory, I think Marianne made the right move. I want to go back in just for a second, because I can actually address what happened with Jonathan here. I grew up in small town Minnesota, very conservative, and what he said is a very juvenile understanding of systemic racism and implicit bias and subconscious bias. I had that once upon a time. And then I was able to grow up and grow out and try and show empathy and be an active listener. By the end of the tribal council, I think Jonathan has maybe a little bit better of an understanding. I hope that this starts him on a journey of understanding and a journey of empathy and a journey of active listening. But for people, maybe our listeners who are maybe connecting with Jonathan thinking, oh yeah, well, they did make it about race. How do you explain? I want you guys to try to challenge yourselves that implicitly it may have been, and that's okay, because we all need to address this in our own ways. Just do it as an advocate, do it as, an ally to the cause. So that used to be me. I'm ashamed to say it, but I'm proud of the progress that I've made. And so I just wanted to say, I get where Jonathan was coming from. If you think that way, I get where you're coming from, but I want you to take the next few steps. That's important to me, and I feel like I need to say that.
And even if, let's say Jonathan's 100% right on this one. He's not, but let's say he was. Okay, but look at what Drea and Marianne are seeing from their perspective. Right. Half of the black people are gone. From their perspective, of course that's alarming. And so Jonathan needed to stop down and really listen to their perspective. Perception can be reality, and look at this perception. They're, put two and two together, it looks a certain way. So yeah, I think it's mostly just comes down to the fact Jonathan needed to put himself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah, and even crazier yet, Drea was the primary and Marianne was a backup. Mm-hmm. So no matter how you slice this episode up, I mean, this very well could be a textbook example of implicit racism at work.
Sure.
These last three episodes back to back to back.
Sure.
So, it's just something that needs to be said.
It certainly needs to be addressed.
Worthy of observation.
Yes. And I'm glad that this came through in the way that it did, because it came through in a way that it seemed like Jonathan felt like it was very innocent and he had no malice or anything to what he was saying, but it was still it still came across that way to especially Drea, since he was interacting directly with her. And I think since so many people might find themselves in that type of situation where they think it might be completely innocent, it's not always that way. So I really hope that people are able to identify with Jonathan in that way and are able to hopefully put themselves in his shoes, in his perspective, and then also be able to see Drea's perspective in that conversation, hopefully for their own future reference.
So basically, I think what we're saying here is just stop, relax, and think about how the other person sees things. If you can do that, I think you'll not only be effective at Survivor, but I think you'll be much more effective at life.
Yeah, we said we're not here to give life advice, but
here's a little life advice.
I think this is maybe some good life advice. Whether or not you heed it, I guess, is up to you guys, and hopefully it's advice that serves everyone well.
Yep. Empathy. So all of this it's gotten a little heavy. So Jeff is like, do you guys want to just like not do a regular vote? It seems a little silly. This is saw something similar with the Varner situation back in Game Changers. Should we just we don't need to do this silly ritual? Should we just talk this out? And they all agree to do it. Marianne and Dre, they play their idols, so they're safe. Jonathan is safe. So now it's between Tori and Lindsay, and everybody's like, yeah, it's gonna be Tori. So Tori, she's like, all right, I'm gonna play my shot in the dark. Doesn't work. So Tori is out of the game. 4 verbal votes to 0, I guess technically is what it would be.
Right. On a gameplay level, I don't know what happened. I am very upset that Lindsay didn't play her shot in the dark, because there are 2 safes in the urn, and there are 12 total envelopes. So if Tori says that she's going to play her shot in the dark, and the other 3 are all voting for Tori, Lindsay should be like, yeah, I am going to also play my shot in the dark. Because if Tori is safe and Lindsay is safe, they need to figure out something to do. I would guess that maybe they would do a fire making challenge, or maybe it nullifies the idols and they all draw rocks. I don't know what that looks like, but I do think that Lindsay should have played her shot in the dark, and it's worthy of mention.
I wonder if, since they were split into 2 different tribals, if yes, there were 2 scrolls technically that said safe on them, 12 total scrolls. I wonder if they weren't split up at these separate tribal councils. There was only 1 at each.
Maybe. And if that's the case, then if Tori was drawing from the urn first, it wouldn't matter what Lindsay has done. And maybe Jeff explained that better, and they just didn't put it in the episode.
Yeah. That would be my guess. I guess we don't know for sure. So yeah, I'm not going to judge Lindsay because we don't have enough information.
Yeah, maybe they had something a little bit more clearly worked out or discussed. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So no comments on that one until we get more information, if we ever do. So Tori's out. Right move, I guess, in the end. Because Drea did the right move playing her idol. Marianne did the right move playing her idol. What's left? Voting out Tori.
Yeah, given where everything landed, I think the tribe kind of backwardsly got everything right, because they were targeting someone who was a threat to win the game. They had a blindside planned. No one really leaked that information to Drea. Drea correctly played her idol. Marianne correctly played her idol. And this is, strictly from gameplay, not talking about the social ramifications. And ultimately, Tori, the one person outside the alliance, went home.
It's the right one person in this game I can't stand's out of the game. Woo!
Yeah, I also agree that it was the right person to go home. She should have been the backup plan to begin with.
Yes.
So if you're not going to get Drea out, who is a completely fair person to be gunning for, given her giant arsenal of advantages, at least take a swing and hope for the best. Tori is a great backup plan. Yes, the one thing basically is that she's very beatable, it seems like, in the end. So keep that in mind. But we just got rid of Roxroy, so I guess there's that too.
So let's get into best and worst player episode. Josh, why don't you start us off? Since 2 people got voted out tonight, we're going to give out 2 best and 2 worst. Josh, who do you have for best player of the episode? Your 2 best players of the episode.
I chose one from each tribal, almost by coincidence, mostly. Even though he didn't handle the beginning of the episode very well, I did give it to Hai because he won immunity, and I think that for him, it was much better of a move to get out Roxroy versus someone like Mike. Mike, it didn't make any sense at all for him to get rid of Roxroy. At least High had a little bit of reasoning behind it. So I'm going to bump that enough up for him to give him one of the best players. The other one that I'm going to give is Drea, just for recognizing the situation right off the bat and planting her flag in saying, I'm going to play my idol. You guys figure out the rest.
I agree completely with Drea. I actually went with Romeo for my second one, just because I love how he handled everything back in camp. He survived this road due to his great social game with Omer and took out Roxroy. I thought it was a great night for Romeo.
I don't really understand that. I think the only thing he did good was at the very beginning of the episode where he basically he just kept quiet and he lied about his vote, even though High knew it was him anyways. Omer did everything for him, so I'm not really sure if that's a credit to his social game. Even
he has that connection with Omer for Omer to put his neck out on the line for Romeo.
Well, and I'll just completely agree with Drea, and I had Omer for my second best because I think keeping the Taku 4 strong ultimately is something he was able to accomplish. Again, doing it from not being safe. He has a connection with Romeo, and Romeo is going to be willing to work with him and maybe only him going forward. So he has another number working for him. And getting rid of Roxroy is getting rid of one of those giant, more physical specimen meat shields that he didn't want to be a part of for whatever reason, which brings him closer to High in the short term as well. So I really like the way that Omer was able to navigate everything. And it seems that he got exactly what he wanted. And, we can sit here 4,000 miles away and debate whether or not he made the right move. But right there on the ground, he got exactly what he wanted.
Worst player, I'll go first. I had Jonathan for my first one due to his domineering social game with Lindsay, telling Marianne she was the backup boat. Not a great tribal council performance. He did win immunity, but I don't think that's enough to help him out of the spot. And then my other one is actually High, because I hated how he handled coming back in tribal council and his conflict with Romeo. I don't like that he voted out Roxroy. He did win immunity. Hilariously, I'm going to give the two people who won immunity, Jonathan and High, my two worst players of the episode.
I'm going to follow right along with Jonathan. You already said it best. I had Lindsay for my other one, but because of our discussion here on the podcast where maybe they did split up that shot in the dark, that was kind of the reason. I think I will switch. I like High because I really don't like the way he handled getting a vote. It was very Lex-like, and you don't want to do that.
Don't want to be Lex.
And another comment that I think was very subtle was Romeo saying that everyone perceives High as kind of the weasel of the season. That's not just coming from Romeo. He said it like it's understood.
Sure.
So we got some insight into High's social game, or at least what's going on maybe behind the scenes. So I will agree with High.
So I think Josh would just be a homer for his winner pick.
Maybe. I think you guys are just tough on him because you guys are sore losers.
Maybe. Who do you got for worst?
So this might be a little unconventional, but I had no bad players. Now, that doesn't mean that no one played poorly. I think High had a couple of negative moments, but he had enough positive things to bring him back to neutral or best of the episode. Jonathan, he had some very rough moments in there. I think he was pretty wrong with his thinking of, telling Marianne and that she was the backup plan, along with his performance at tribal council. But we're also forgetting that he won immunity, he won food for his tribe, and someone outside of his alliance went home, which was started by his effort. So all of that brings him also back up to neutral for me. So that's enough to not say that he's a bad player for this episode overall. So he was neutral. I'm not giving any best players. I'm not giving any worst players.
This is a shock coming from Josh.
This is a hot Josh take right here.
One of the very few times Josh has refused to give one out, unless we're in the final four.
8 players left in the game.
And with 2 awards eligible.
Wow. This is a big shock. I can't say I agree with you in any way, shape, or form.
I can actively say I disagree with him, but I respect it.
Okay.
Can you disagree that Jonathan had positive things that could bring him back up to neutral?
I think that his positive things were very analog and his negative things were very social. and there was enough there to say that he hurt himself. But again, like, if you want to give out none, that is your right as one of the 3 co-hosts to abstain.
I would say winning food for his group is completely irrelevant. He did win immunity. I'll give him that.
But he didn't save himself.
And someone outside of his alliance went home, which was started by him.
Yeah, but like, he started the ball rolling, go after Drea, who he was in alliance with. So I don't know how much credit you could give him that. Anyway, let's get into who is going next, which is a complicated one. This could go many different ways. Derek, why don't you start us off?
Because we don't know what the fallout of the Roxroy vote is going to look like, at least Tori went home. So there's some semblance of, normalcy, and everyone can say Roxroy was trying to start an all men's alliance. I'm going to assume status quo. Romeo goes next. I know that's me picking the low-hanging fruit, but I'll be the one on the podcast to do it.
Do I go with the safe pick or not? Because I want to say Romeo, and that's what I'm going to go with. But if I want to try to be bold this episode, screw it. No, I'm going to be bold this episode.
Yeah.
I already said that there is no worst player of the episode. I'm going to hot take central.
Yeah, you're out of dry powder, buddy. You gotta
shoot
for
it. Next episode, Drea uses her knowledge is power advantage against Mike. Mike goes home.
Oh gosh, that would kill me. I don't like it. Yeah, let's not do a hot take, Josh.
I don't like it either. Like I said, Romeo seems like a status quo safe pick. Like everything's fine, but I feel like that makes sense, especially as an aftermath of the Roxroy vote. That could absolutely happen because Mike said it in this episode. What are people going to think after we come back? And Roxroy trusted me, and then I'm going to have to go deal with that when we get back. We might see that come up next episode.
I think everything's going to fall apart in the next episode. I don't think Romeo's going at all. I'm going to go just chalk pick Jonathan. Just like, this seems like a great opportunity to take Jonathan out. I think it'll finally happen, and we'll lose Jonathan here. All right, last thing to talk about, who cannot win the game? Josh. 2 people cannot win the game. Going into tonight, I had Tori and Roxroy as my 2 who couldn't win the game, and they're both gone now, so it really mixes things up.
Makes last week Ryan look like a genius.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't win the game.
Right.
I want to put a little asterisk on here as I have not fully thought this through, so I'll give us all the same asterisks because I have not completely gone through the vote by vote combinations on a final tribal council, so I haven't figured this out yet. So big asterisk here for all of us. This is just kind of like fresh. We're hot off the platter. What do we got? Who cannot win the game? Josh, go ahead.
Oh, great. I'm first. Wonderful.
Yep.
Love it. Yeah. We're picking 2 people for this?
2 people who cannot win the game.
Assuming a final 3.
Assuming a final 3.
I'm assuming we're never getting a final 2 again.
Yep. I feel like people wouldn't really respect Romeo's game if he made it to the end. So I'm going to pick Romeo. The other one, completely up in the air. No idea. I think it's between Jonathan and Lindsay. I think a lot of people would have trouble discrediting Jonathan's path to the end if he was able to make the final 3. So I think I would give it to Lindsay. But I could also see Jonathan's negative social game working against him there. I'm gonna default to Lindsay, but that's tough.
It's really tough. I'm going to agree with you on Romeo, just because he's seemed to have pissed a lot of people off. I'm going to throw Marianne as my second one. I don't feel great about it, and I definitely reserve the right to change that later on. But I think she has annoyed quite a few people, even though she had a great episode tonight. So I really have to think about this one more. But just right now, I'm going to go Romeo and Marianne.
I have Marianne as well. So Romeo is my easy number 1. I have Marianne as well, and I think that's because her path to the final 3 doesn't include any of the other members of Taku, because the other members of Taku have her at number 4.
Yeah.
Which means that she has to burn a lot of bridges and then overcome the great gameplay of whoever else she's going to the end with, and I don't think that she'll have been able to do that in this short amount of time while these other people have been positively building their cases or their resumes for the end. So I we'll probably change these names next week again.
Yeah, 100%. I'm pretty sure.
But for right now, based on what we've seen, I think that Marianne's path to the end just is not one that leads to victory. So Romeo, Marianne.
Let's go head over to Twitter. We have a Twitter poll that we ask every week. Did the right people get voted out? Did the right people go home? Josh, what did Twitter have to say this week?
Yeah, so since there's a double tribal council, we gave 4 options on if the person in the first tribal and the person in the second tribal were the right people to go home. It was pretty close, but the majority did go to yes, being correct on both tribal councils.
Huh. Well, Twitter's wrong again.
Followed by a close second place of yes, correct in the first with Roxroy and no in the second.
What?
So I'm not sure what Twitter's thinking along those lines, but we had 61 votes, so like it wasn't just like swung by 1 or 2 votes.
Oh, Twitter. You never cease to amaze me with your wrongness.
I don't like this era of Elon's Twitter.
Anything else from Twitter tonight?
Yeah, we also had a comment from at X Sarah Gilbs on Twitter.
Who's that?
Someone named Sarah Sakura on Twitter, who commented, if Lindsay and Tori played their shot in the dark and both received safe, would no one have gone home? We kind of answered this a little bit. It's all skeptical. We don't know. Were there 2 eligible scrolls at each tribal council? What's it split 1 and 1? So I don't really know the answer to it. What do you think?
Best guess is they did the thing and they only put 1 safe in there just to make sure they couldn't all get immunity. That would be my guess. They probably might have called an audible on that one. Don't know for sure, but that's my best guess.
This is hard for me to say because of what they've done the last 2 seasons, but I'm going to trust that production had a plan and that only one person would end up going home. And I don't think it would be a person who won immunity or anyone who played an idol. It would have to play out between Lindsay and Tori somehow, whether that's fire making in the rain or drawing rocks. I don't know what that would look like, but I'm going to trust production and say that we would have gotten a vote out.
Everyone loses immunity. We go again with a fire making challenge. First 4 to make fire live.
Oh, no.
There we go. We also had a comment from Brandon Straight on Twitter at bstraight7, who said Romeo has a better shot at winning the game, so he needs to go. Roxroy is undeniably loyal and will never win. Probably right. Perfect person to bring along for the ride.
I'm inclined to agree.
I think we all agree here.
All right. Well, you guys, you can follow us on Twitter at Castaway Pod, on TikTok at Castaway Consultants, Instagram, the whole caboodle.
We are now officially followed by the legendary Billy Garcia.
Yes, the greatest
huge announcement, guys.
The greatest second boot in Survivor history. Billy Garcia has followed us. So thanks a lot, Billy. If somehow you hear this, you're the man. We love you.
And we've always loved you.
Yep.
I learned about you live on the podcast, essentially after we were going through your season.
Yep.
So
this is very exciting. Billy's great.
We got mad love for Billy.
Yes.
Yeah. Shout out to our Cook Islands Rewind pre-merge.
Yeah. That was a good one. Go listen to our Cook Islands. Speaking of race issues,
yeah.
Go listen to our talk about Survivor Cook Islands.
Wow. How was that so timely? Weird.
Thanks, Billy.
Thanks. All right. Anything else, guys?
I got nothing.
All right. This has been the Castaway Consultants.
Got nothing else for you.
Good night.